Welcome into another episode of the Big Blue News Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Beatsmore, and today I'm joined by a longtime sportscasting icon who has been the radio color analyst for UK football since 2002 and also worked for the Reds as co-host of Reds Live pregame. Welcome in, Jeff Piecoro. How are you doing?
I'm good, Chris. How are you?
I'm doing well. So I brought you in today to preview the UK football season since we are about a week away from the first game. So what do you think about the team so far, just from practice wise?
I think that this team is, I think they're a lot older, if that makes sense. You know, they're a junior and senior oriented team. We got a lot of guys coming back at key positions. So it's been pretty seamless once they started practice. They all know what they're doing. There's not a whole lot of teaching going on. It's much more refining. So, you know, the first practice coach said was the best he's had in the 10 years he's been here.
And you're right about that with having a lot of depth with the QB with Will Levis. He's returning along with Chris Rodriguez. But with Chris Rodriguez being possibly out a few games, who do you think will replace him, especially for the Florida game, for the first 3 or 4 games?
Luckily, I think that running back's one of their deepest positions on the offense. Cavassi Smoke, obviously from last year, was a nice player. They've got Mike Drennan back there. I'm just going to go down the list of the guys that I think are going to play a lot. As Utan McLean, of course, he's got great speed. He can get to the corner really nicely. The other guy that I really like is Ramon Jefferson. He is the guy that came over from Sam Houston Stick. He's a little bit smaller in stature. He's about 5'10" maybe, but he's 215 pounds. And I hate comparing college players to great pro athletes, but he's a guy that will remind you a little bit of a Barry Sanders, where he comes into the hole, but he has what we call a jump cut. So when he gets in there, he could change direction really well. So he's got great peripheral vision, and he'll get up into the hole and he'll see that, you know, there's a lane over here, and all of a sudden, boom, he's there. He's just, I think, great addition. He's got 1 year to play, and that's this year. I just think he's going to be a fantastic back. But other than that, I think that, like I said, they're very deep there. They've got a huge room. Lavelle Wright is another guy exploded in the Louisville game. So they're very deep at running back.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. UK is definitely deep with the running back position. I think 6 running backs you just named or so. Yeah. But yeah, Ramon Jefferson, I'm surprised with the Barry Sanders comparison. So I'm very excited about that. I'm ready to see what he can do for sure with replacing, Chris Rodriguez for a few games. So now, as we continue to talk about the offense, who have you been the most impressed with other than, the running back position?
Probably the tight end position. The tight ends are, you get Keenan Upshaw back, and a lot of people forget just what he can bring to this team. I mean, here's a guy that missed basically all of last season, and Upshaw's 6'6", 250 pounds, can run like a deer. He reminds me of some of those Georgia or Florida tight ends that they've had, one after the other, that have made it to the NFL. He gives you that. The kid that's really been turning heads is Josh Caddis. He's a freshman from Moeller High School, and he's not quite as big as the other guys. He's 6'4", 230, 235, but he's got that nasty streak in him. I mean, here's a kid that's a true freshman, and he's out there at practice when the whistle blows, and he's still blocking a guy to the ground. And he's one of those guys that gets under your skin if you're a defensive guy. I don't want to say he started fights, but he's done a great job. Right, Brendan Bates, of course, has come back. The other kid from Moeller, who's a super senior as well. You've got some of these guys have changed numbers, and I have to find their numbers to remember their names. Isaiah Cummings is another guy that's back over there. So, and then Dingle is the guy that a lot of people said, who is this guy and where did he come from? Because really they've been trying to find a place for him, and now they have Jordan Dingle. He and his brother both have been turning heads. His brother Justice is a fullback, which Kentucky really hasn't had, but They use a fullback here, an H-back, and it's kind of a hybrid between a tight end and a running back. But the Dingle brothers, I think, are going to turn some heads this year too. But that's a very deep tight end room, and you're going to see it on the field a lot of times. 2 tight end sets, but not traditionally where they're lined up right next to the tackles. They're going to be split out. There's going to be one there. There's going to be one in the backfield. You could have 3 tight end sets where you have a traditional tight end, what we call a Taylor, and then also one in the backfield. So there's a lot of looks they can give you. Just think of the San Francisco 49ers offense. And if you know what that looks like, that's kind of what Kentucky's offense is going to look like.
And that's where Rich Scangarello was previously
That's
at.
right.
Well,
That's right.
But yeah, like you said, I'm really excited for the tight end room. I've talked to Josh Caddis a few times before, he committed to UK. I actually got to meet him a few weeks ago at Buffalo Wild Wings. Like the whole UK football team rode up to watch one of the Bahamas games for Kentucky basketball. So now let's talk about the young wide receiver core with UK. I know we got the transfer from Virginia Tech with Tavion Robinson, but can you talk about the freshman this upcoming year on the wide receiver end?
Yeah, well, before I do that, I do want to talk about Chris Lewis. He is really come on. He was a red shirt last year. He's got good size. He's got really good hands. He's over 6'4". He's about 205, almost 210 pounds, but he's got really good hands. I think he's going to be could be a difference maker for this team if you're looking for somebody to step up. But the guy that really has turned heads where you just go, wow. 2 of them really, Darian Brown. Darian has got great hands. The thing I like about him, especially for being a receiver, is a lot of guys, we call it fighting the ball. Mm-hmm. You kind of reach out for it, or he's got really nice hands where he catches it away from his body, which is the first great attribute. You can't let the ball get into your body. That's when you see it bounce away. He's got great soft hands where he brings it in like this when he catches it, and he just doesn't look like a freshman out there, and he can absolutely fly. Great speed out of Darian Brown. Then the other one that's the true freshman that you're just like, where did this guy come from? Is Dane Key. And obviously a kid that's from right here in Lexington for Frederick Douglass, and Key's the same way. Very good route runner, good hands. I haven't seen him drop a lot of balls in years past. I've seen a lot of balls on the ground when they do 7-on-7s and stuff like that. This year we haven't. I think that those 2 guys, Darian Brown and Dane Key, are really going to stand out. Of course, Tavion Robinson has got over 100 catches in his career. He's not going to be Wan'Dale because that's not him. And he says, look, I'm not trying to be Wan'Dale Robinson either. He has a different skill set than Wan'Dale has. He's still a guy that is going to go over the middle. He's still a guy that's going to be an inside receiver more so than outside, because Brown's going to do that, and Dane and some of the other speed guys. But he's got really good hands, doesn't drop a lot, very smart. And I think he's a guy that's probably going to get you 50 to 75 catches this year. That's exactly what they're looking for. Chauncey Magwood, another guy who's got really good hands, who had some catches last year that can be a difference maker. So I think they're pretty deep out there at wide receiver. They've got guys that can make plays. Rashawn Lewis, who got some playing time last year, has really turned some heads this year too. He's got good hands. He's a tough guy, obviously, because of his dad, probably. But I mean, he's just a tough, hard-nosed player that I'm not worried if he's out there on the field. So I think it's a very deep, wide receiving core. But the one other thing about Darian Brown that I like is he's the second fastest receiver. Obviously, the one young man that's Jordan Anthony, that's the track star, but Jordan Anthony, this is one thing that people don't realize too. He's a track sprinter. So when he's in what we call underwear, the little whites and a t-shirt, he can run a 4.2 40. But when you put pads on, it's a different kind of speed. Darian Brown runs a 4.3 40. And when he puts pads on, he still runs almost a 4.3 40. So and I'm not taking anything away from Anthony, but he's just learning to play football. If you're too young to remember this, but there was a guy named Ronaldo Nehemiah who was a great track star, and he played, the 49ers got him to basically just stretch the field. He could run straight faster than anybody, but he couldn't really make much cuts. But he, right now that's where he is. But you can't teach speed, and they've got speed now to take the top off. What they might do with him too is just put him on the outside and say, "You go." He takes off, so the corner that's covering him has to go, and then the safety has to go too. So he's going to pull two players, and now you come underneath him. So that's what speed does for you.
For sure. And maybe you could talk about also, Demarcus Harris. I believe he was a redshirt junior this past year.
Demarcus played last year. Another guy, good hands, who knows the offense well. It's a deep room. I mean, there's not the one superstar guy. Robinson would be the closest to that. That you could say, okay, I know we're going to get, 50 catches. That's him. But it's a very deep room, and that's what you need with this offense. Nowadays in football at all levels, high school, college, and pro, you see, 6, 8, 10 wide receivers play every game. That's just the way it is now. And Kentucky's finally got that. They've got some depth there, and they're just waiting for those guys to step up and become, the big play guys.
And we've been talking a lot about the offense, but what do you think about the new offensive coordinator and Rich Scangarello?
Yeah, I like Scan. Rich is a good guy. He's done a nice job. He was handpicked, obviously by Mark, and he was the first choice to replace Liam because he wanted to stay with that NFL offense. And I think he's in a good spot. He's been a play caller before with the Broncos. And so I don't think it's going to be too big for him. I really like the way his mind works and how he tries to attack a defense. Obviously we haven't been the media, but most of the media has not been able to see practice. Luckily, Tom and I get to go and Dick Gabriel, but you're going to see a little bit more of a wide open offense that's not as run. They're going to run the football, but with the question surrounding Chris, I think you'll see the short passing game be a little bit more in their offense, and also the guy that can take off the top. And that's something that they've missed for a long time, to have, maybe since Juice was here years ago, that guy that can really stretch the defense vertically.
Yeah, I really love the duo with Garrett Juice Johnson and Jeff Badet back in the day, for sure. Yeah. That was a great duo. So let's talk about the big blue wall. We lost 2 offensive tackles this past year with Darian Kennard and Dare Rosenthal, plus the center and Luke Fortner. How will UK replace that this year, and has anybody really stepped up?
That's a great question, because they've had some guys nicked up. I'm not going to lie to you. Buford has been steady, so he's going to be at one side. Flax has been nicked up a little bit. I think tackle is where they're thinnest at. They have Wollaball, and they have Buford, and they have Flax. I just don't think Kenyatta Goodwin, the big 5-star, is, how do I put this? He's got all the tools to be great. But as a young kid coming in and having to play against Florida and Georgia and the Alabamas of the world, I just don't know if he's ready yet. I think when you're that size, when you're that massive of a player in high school, hey, Chris, you know this, you go to high school games, you'll see it. You'll see one guy that's 250, 260, 280, and he's up against a guy that's my size. The defender, the defensive lineman he's playing against is a 215-pound guy, and he just pushes him around. And to be 360 pounds in high school and be as big and massive as he is, he just swallowed guys. Well, now you're at the SEC level, which is the highest level of that there is. And so I think it was a comeuppance for him when he first got here. He was like, whoa, these guys are 325 pounds. They could bench the whole weight room, they're as big and strong as I am. He's learning to play that position. But to rely on a freshman, I think that's awful tough, especially at tackle. So they need to stay healthy at tackle. Inside, they're going to be great. They're fine. Horsey has been banged up. It's going to be interesting to see, how much he plays in the first couple of games too. But I'm Tayshaun Manning is a monster. The kid that came over from Auburn, his arms are the size of my thighs. He's just a massive player. He goes about 330 pounds, and he just running behind him and Eli Cox. Oh man. Eli is going to be, I think Eli is going to have the ability to be better than any center that's been here in the last 5 or 6 years. And, the last 3 centers have all, gone to the NFL.
Yeah.
So, Luke Fortner is probably going to start this year. Yeah. So, I mean, that's awesome. And this guy, Eli Cox, I think is as good or better than every one of them. He's just a junior. So he's going to have 2 years playing there, and he's fantastic. So, and especially in this offense, you work from the inside out. I think in this offense, the guards are the most important. The center and guards are the most important than the tackles because of the tight ends, so they can help with chipping and stuff like that. So again, that's the one position where we just can't get any injuries.
I agree completely. And on Monday, the depth chart is supposed to be released for this game coming up Saturday. So I'll be interested to see what's the depth chart going to look like for Miami, Ohio. So continuing to talk about the O-line, how have you liked Zach Yenser so far, the new?
Yeah. And again, another guy coming from the NFL and coming from the same system that Scangarello coached at San Francisco. He was there. I really liked Zach. I think that a lot of times you'll see a coach come in and they use different places as a stepping stone because they're looking for that next big job. It's kind of tough to turn down Alabama, which is what the last offensive line coach did. But, I think this is a place he likes to be. He's from Northern Kentucky. He went to high school right up there. So he's a guy that I think this is a place where he wants to be. His family can come down and see that all still live up in Northern Kentucky. He's done a great job. Like his style of play, they're aggressive to a point. But again, if I can only hark back to San Francisco because you guys haven't been able to see practice. If you watch San Francisco, they run the football. Of course, they have Dabo Sweeney or Debu. The coach at Clemson is not the running back for Debu Samuel, who's just a freak, athlete, kind of like Lynn Bowden was the way they used him. But if you watch the way that they block their schemes and stuff, I think it's easily translated to the college game. So I like what he's done. I think he's a fantastic coach.
Now let's talk a little bit about the defensive side. We have a lot of players returning with Jordan Wright, Jaquez Jones, DeAndre Square, but also losing a key piece in Josh Pascal. How will the defense look this upcoming year?
I think that the bigger loss with losing Josh was the leader that he was. Who replaces him as the leader of the defense? You probably look at DeAndre Square for that. Jaquez Jones, 2 guys that are going to be playing 90% of the snaps in there, one at inside linebacker, one at the Sam spot. But I think that the one guy I think could be a difference maker on this team is Octavius Oxendine, who got hurt last year. Remember, he was having a pretty nice year. He got hurt and missed the last half of the season. But, Oxendine is from Radcliffe over at North Hardin. He's kind of the same size as Pascal, 285 pounds. He's very explosive. He's got great hands. And when you say that about a defender, that's somebody that can get their hands on the offensive lineman before they can get their hands on his jersey. So he's very good with, you could say, martial arts at keeping their hands off of him. They practice that. They have guys that come in and teach that kind of stuff. But he's very good, very quick, got good flash. They've got size up front in that defensive line. I think guys, Justin Rogers, the 5-star recruit's a junior from Detroit. I think he's got to step up. I like Ribka. Ribka has done a nice job so far that he's been in there. Josiah Hayes has done a nice job. He's at 310 pounds. And then they've got a true freshman you guys are going to be amazed at when you see him get out there on the field. Dion Walker's his name. He's from Detroit, Michigan, true freshman. He's a monster at 6'6". He goes about 330 pounds. He is a difference maker on the defensive front. I haven't seen someone with his size and his ability come in here. And I hate comparing, but he's got an opportunity, in my opinion, to be the next Art Still. He could be that good. He's huge. He's got long arms. But the great thing, when you think of a 6'6", 330-pound player, you think of some big plotty guy, but he's got great feet, quick feet. He's got a quick burst. So what we call is quick twitch. He's got the quick twitch muscles that smaller guys have. He's a monster that plays smaller than his size. He's got great speed, great quickness off the ball. I think that's going to be the next big star. He can stay healthy. He doesn't get hurt. I think Dion Walker's a guy to remember. He's number 51. Mm-hmm. So remember him on Saturdays when you see him go out there, because I think he could be something special up front. I'm not worried about the defensive line. A lot of people are. I'm not. I think that they've got a really nice group. And the great thing about it is they're too deep at each position. So they've got some guys, if somebody gets nicked up or somebody needs a blow, I think you'll probably see Oxendine maybe take 50 snaps in a game, maybe. And if your best players are only playing 40 or 50 snaps, that's pretty good. So.
Yeah, and whenever I've gone to, their practices with Fan Day, and then also I went to the spring game, I was a little nervous on the offensive side, especially during Fan Day. I saw, the QB throwing interceptions, the different QB. But the defensive side, it looked great for sure during Fan Day, and I was like, I think our defense is going to be pretty great. Another player I wanted to ask you about is the Ohio State transfer, Darian Henry Young. How has he done so far at Kentucky?
He's done okay. I think they're still trying to figure out what to do with him, because he's a freak kind of player. His size at 6'4" and 255 pounds, he's a little light to put his hand on the ground. And in high school, up in Cincinnati at Princeton, when I saw him play, he was a down lineman, but he has the ability. He's real wiry at 6'4", 255 pounds. So I think he has the ability to play up in a 2-point stance on the edge, but he's got two guys named Wright and Weaver that are playing there that are probably going to get 90% of the snaps there. So it'll be interesting. But like I said, I think that they're still trying to figure out what they have. He's almost in the same mode as Pascal was, where do we use him inside? Do we use him outside? Do we use him with his hand on the ground? Do we use him standing up? Is he better in pass coverage on the edge? Or do we want him to bulk up and put another 15 to 20 pounds on and be, in a 3 or 4 point stance? So they're still trying to figure that out with him. Really good athlete. Obviously, if he went to Ohio State, they don't, they don't take guys who aren't great athletes. But again, it's getting used to this. This is a totally different defense than what Ohio State plays. And in high school, they were a traditional 5-2 or 3-4, whatever you want to call it, defense. So I think it's a little bit more than what he's used to. But again, getting used to this place and what they're trying to do with him. So he's one of those guys. I don't want to say square peg in a round hole, but still trying to figure out what are they going to do, because he's such a good athlete. I think you'll see him a lot on special teams because he is such a great athlete, and they'll find him a place to play, if not this year, in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that. I'm getting into my final set of questions. Who do you think will be the X factor on the offense and defensive side for UK?
Well, X factor is easy on offense. It's Will Levis. I mean, if he stays healthy like he did last year, I think he'll cut down on his interceptions, because a year ago he thought my arm is strong enough I can Brett Favre it, And if you go back and look at Brett Favre, he had 200 interceptions to go with his, all the touchdowns he had. He's learned the game a lot more. He's just a leader, obviously. I mean, he leads those guys on the field, off the field, just a great player. Defensively, pick any of the linebackers. I mean, they're so deep at linebacker. I mean, there's guys out there, and you look and you go, I can't. How do you keep Trevin Wallace off the field? Is the question. Well, you got Jones and you got Square in front of him, but he has to play. He's just such a great athlete. He's 6'2". He's bulked up. He's about 245 pounds, and he's got 5% body fat, if that. I mean, he's just a rock. De'Aaron Jackson, we saw him come in at the end of the year last year, recovering from an injury. And look what he did against Louisville in the bowl game. Mm-hmm. And he gives you that thump on the inside. He's 255 pounds. Each of these guys have such a great skill set that it's like, how do you keep that guy off the field? A guy like a Luke Fortin could play in a lot of places. And here he's pretty much relegated to special teams because he just can't break through with those 6 guys they have. D'Eric would start for pretty much any team. And here he might get 15 to 20 snaps a game. But that's a great problem to have, because now what you do is when you play a running team, when you go up against the teams that give us problems running the football, and it's always been like a Mississippi State, even though that Mike Leach is there, they tend to be able to run the ball. Now you can get Wallace and you can get D'Eric in there. Who are tougher against the run. And then when you're playing teams like the Floridas and stuff and Tennessees who like to try to get you out in space, then you go with, your little bit lighter guys that can move around the field. So they're hugely talented at linebacker. The linebacker core is the best that I've ever seen here. But man, any of those guys are to me could be difference makers. But if I had to pick one, it would probably be Square, only because he played in that bowl game on one leg, and that was better than anything they had. And he ended up making the interception that won the game for him. So probably him.
For sure. What do you think UK's record will be this upcoming year?
That's a great question. I think the key game to all of it is game 2, and that is the Florida game at Florida. Miami is picked to win their division in the OVC or in the MAC. Miami's a really solid team. I think they win that game, and then that gives them a little bit of confidence. And now they head to Florida. The great thing about playing Florida second is that Florida plays Utah to open the season, and Utah's in a tough spot. Utah played in the Rose Bowl last year. Utah is probably, along with Oregon, the 2 best teams now in the Pac-10 or Pac-12 or whatever they are now because of the defection of USC and UCLA. So I think Utah is playing for their football life. They have to beat teams, and they have to beat teams impressively. Kyle Whittingham's done such a great job there. And I think this is a game where you're playing a elite SEC school, even though Florida's been on a little bit of a downward trend. It's still, if Utah beats them and beats them up like they're going to try to do, because Utah's a big, tough, strong team. You saw that Ohio State game in them in the Rose Bowl last year was ridiculous. And then then Florida plays Kentucky. So I think Kentucky's in a great spot there. And I think that's the key to the season. If you win that game, you go to Ole Miss undefeated. That's the second big game on their schedule. If you can get by that game undefeated, and now you've beaten Florida and you've beaten Ole Miss on the road. I think that gives you the confidence. And then it sets up to the 2 games towards the end of the schedule, which Kentucky's always had problems with Tennessee. Kentucky's always had problems with Georgia. Yep. So those games, to me, Florida, Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Georgia are the difference in this team winning 8 games and this team winning 10 or 11 games in the regular season. I mean, Chris Doering picked them to beat Georgia and finish 11-1. So it's going to be really interesting. I think this team can win 8 games, and I think this team could win double digits in the regular season. Kentucky's never had an 11-win, regular season.
They haven't.
If you beat those teams on the road, I mean, that would be humongous for this team. So I think it all centers on game 2 at Florida. You win that game, you got great momentum. If you lose that game, now you're thinking, okay, now what do we do? You got 1 game before you go to Ole Miss. So it'll be interesting.
I have them, for me, I'm predicting they'll go 9-3 this upcoming year. I have them losing to Ole Miss, Tennessee, and Georgia. I think they can beat Florida for sure. I think Florida is going to have a little down year just because of them bringing in a new, head coach, and I only have Florida, I think, winning 7 or 8 games, in my opinion, this upcoming year. They'll still be good, but, not as Florida level.
Sure.
Mhm.
I can't wait. Saturdays are going to be fun down south. That's for sure. I think it's going to be it's a wide open. Alabama's, got something to prove because of Georgia. Florida, as you said, with the new coach of Billy Napier, it's going to be a fun season this year. And now all the stuff that's gone on off the field between some of these coaches, Stoops and Beamer.
Yeah.
You don't think South Carolina is going to be keyed up when they play. So it's going to be Eli Drinkowitz and the stuff that he said, and the players who said, the Missouri players when they hate Kentucky. So it's going to be it'll be a crazy year, man.
It'll be very interesting. So this is a UK sports related question, but what do you have to say to the young kids who want to, be a sports anchor, reporter, or even an announcer one day, and they want to, be able to succeed and chase after their dreams?
The first thing is try to get as many internships as you can. I learned so much. It was totally different back when I came up, but I got to work at some great places. I did 2 radio stations, and I worked at Channel 36 as an intern with Kenny Rice, and Kenny gave us the ability to do a lot of things when I was there and cover events. He says to us one day, there was 2 of us as interns, and we come in and Kenny says, okay, go down and interview Lou Carnesecca and John Thompson for the Final Four. And I was like, okay. Just went down there and interviewed him, so you get an opportunity to see behind the veil, it's almost like Oz. They pull the curtain back and you get to see how stuff really works. So to me, it would be that just try to get as many internships as possible, because they can help you. Play a sport. If you don't play a sport, it's not that big a deal. Get an internship that gets you in the door. And if they ask you to do something, or they say, hey, have you ever done this? Say yes, even if you haven't, and then just go do it. But that's the best thing. Hands-on, man. That to me is the best way to get a leg up on the competition who you're up against.
For sure. Finally, do you have anything else you would like to add about, UK football this upcoming year?
I would like to get a woo from you about UK football.
Woo! Let's go UK football. Go Cats. Go BBN.
There we go.
All right. Thank you, Jeff, for taking the time out of your day to do this podcast. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and, go Cats.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you, Jeff.